the top 10 best horror movies of 2022, as decided by two guys who have a podcast and watch horror movies. Let's first start with our honorable mentions. I'm going to run down my list real quick because it's fucking long. Uh,
Brag
Hellbender,
much.
Sissy, Prey, Hatching, Piggy, Scream 5, Watcher, Glorious, which I just watched yesterday, Terrifier 2, Christmas Bloody Christmas, Scare Package 2, Men, The Sadness, Bones and All, and The Menu. All of these movies are excellent. Go see them. They just didn't quite make the top 10 for me. All right, Rod, what you got?
Okay, my honorable mentions. A lot of ones that are same that you mentioned. I want to say the ones that you mentioned. Scare Package 2, Rad Chad's Revenge. And I'm just going to go through the list. Soft and Quiet, Some Like It Rare, Prey, Men, Sissy, Christmas Bloody Christmas, Hypochondriac, Mad God, and Master are my honorable mentions. Look, there's a lot of big budge moves that came out this year that are on a lot of people's top 10 lists. And you might hear them soon, but you might not.
Yeah.
And these honorable mentions are mostly independent ones or not as large, wide released, big budget movies. And I think that they deserve recognition. So,
Yeah. All right. Here it is.
So let's real quick do a quick what makes the top 10 horror film for
let's
us.
do it. Let's do it. You want to start?
Sure. So there's a couple things that I have in my mind. Like there's two parts of my brain where I'm a horror fan that wants to acknowledge actual horror. I hate for something to be more thrillery than it is horror. But I don't like letting that limit my enjoyment of the art. So I have softened lately to allow things that aren't as strictly horror things, because I still think that a horror fan would really jive and appreciate that film. But for me, I want it to move me. I want it to be a unique story, or I want it to be something that a subgenre that's not as well represented or has unique thoughts. Something in it is done at a super high level. It might not all be a complete A+ out of the park, like a 10 out of 10, because really the only 10 out of 10 I had this year was Everything Everywhere All at Once, which wasn't horror.
Yeah.
Nothing else was 10 out of 10. So it has to have an element or two that were so effing huge that it made me love it, and that's why I want to include it.
Yeah. Same thing. Real quick to comment on your only one 10 out of 10 was Everything Everywhere. I totally agree. We've been saying all year this is a great year for horror, so much good horror, but that's it. So much good horror, not much great horror. It was very hard to make a list when all these movies are good, and because they're all good, it's hard to really, so it comes down to personal preference. It comes down to how did I feel while watching the movie, and my personal enjoyment of the film is how I make my top 10 list. So yeah, there might have been some honorable mentions that I gave higher scores to than my top 10, but that's because I objectively thought it was a better film. That doesn't mean I enjoyed it more. So, who wants to start?
I'll start with my number 10.
All right.
My number 10 top horror of 2022, Dashcam. Not that Dashcam, but the other Dashcam. Dashcam, directed by Rob Savage, written by Rob Savage, Jenna Hurdley, Jed Shepard, starring Annie Hardy, Amar Chadel Patel, and Angela Inahoro. This film is extremely polarizing. It is not rated highly on Rotten Tomatoes. It's mostly rotten by audiences and critics. However, it is an extremely well executed found footage that is very surprising, very scary. You have to get over the protagonist. More so than Joseph Winter's movie, this protagonist you will want to punch in the face throughout the whole movie. But you kind of just have to let it go and say, like, yes, this is a piece of shit, and I want to watch this piece of shit crash and burn and all the crazy stuff happen. And they do deliver. It's exciting. It's different. It's unique in some of the camera trickery that they do with found footage and things that they can get away with. Doesn't always make sense, but I don't care because it's a wild ride and I enjoyed it thoroughly. I just saw this today and it's on my list. It was impactful. And I was like, I wish I would have had more time to like just enjoy it. Maybe watch it at night. It would have been scarier. Wonderful film.
All right. My number 10 is X, written and directed by Ty West, starring Mia Goth, Jenna Ortega. Um, as the sheriff says, it's one goddamn fucked up horror picture. Um, I really enjoyed X. Nice slasher with a lot of subtext. They talk about ageism. They talk about, um, well, just like beauty, and there's so much about like your own self-worth, self-image. There's really a lot more going on in this screenplay than just killing a bunch of guys trying to make a porno in the woods. um, and it's unfortunate that Pearl fell so flat. As Rodney already said, it was a big disappointment for the year. But for me, number 10 couldn't go any higher, and I wanted it on the list. So
Sure.
the 10 slot is perfect for it.
It's fair. I thought you picked it because of the Roman numeral connection. All
Oh,
right.
oh, that's good. I didn't even see it.
I'm so creative. Okay, my number 9 film is Hatching, written and directed by Hannah Bergholm, starring Siri Solinina, Sofia Hikila. Look, these are Swedish names. I apologize for fucking them up. Hatching. This year, which we didn't get into this kind of idea, but there was a ton of witchy / folklore films. Hatching is a folklore tale, and it kills it. It's unique. It has great creature effects with the creature that's involved. It's a kind of tried and true social media-esque vibe that's also included in the film, which is a bit overdone, but it all works. It being foreign helps. You attach with the lead youth that's in this film, Tina, and she sells it. And what she goes through, you go through, and you want to see how she's able to get through this fairy tale of a movie. And it's grotesque, but it's endearing, and it's fulfilling by the end in a tragic way. So it had to be included in my list. It's small, it's foreign, it has all these great creature effects. It's a cool story. It's well executed, it's well shot, it's well acted. It's everything that you would want. It's creative and new and unique, so it's in my list.
All right, I love Hatching. Great movie. For me, number 9 is Nope, written and directed by Jordan Peele, starring Daniel Kaluuya, Kiki Palmer, and Stephen Moran. This movie is fantastic. It talks about the exploitation of animals in not just film but in life. It's Jaws in the sky, and Jaws is and always will be one of my top 10 of all time. Um, Jordan Peele just keeps crushing it time and time again. Um, Nope also had to be on the list, and unfortunately, as good as it is, I just couldn't get it any higher. So X and Nope are kind of like honorable mention pluses that like just like sit at the
Jeez.
bottom of the
Just
list.
let him be on the top 10. Don't fucking give him these caveats. You're like, listen, guys, I really didn't want to include you, but yeah,
No,
but
no,
I had
no.
to have 10, so you're on there. Jesus. You made the list.
All right.
That's all I need to know. All right.
All right.
Let me hop into my number 8. All right, my number 8 in our top 10. She Will. Directed by Charlotte Colbert, written by Charlotte Colbert and Kitty Pierce, starring Alice Krieg and Malcolm McDowell. She Will, another witchy movie. This is strictly witchy movie, and there were, I want to say, I wrote a list. I want to say that there might have been like 10. No. Let's see. Last Thing Mary Saw, Hellbender, You Won't Be Alone, You're Not My Mother, She Will. Yeah, so okay, 6. Anyways, at any rate, She Will is executed at such a level that I think it needs notoriety. It is Irish or Scottish, I think, is what she's retreating to. The lead character is on a retreat. She's a fading star, so to speak, who went through a traumatic experience filming her uh, youth role directed by Malcolm McDowell. But there was like this sort of trauma that occurred that's unspoken, but that she's lived with her whole life. And now that she's a fading star, she has this resentment and fear of the next phase of life. And she retreats to the Scottish countryside, and witchy shit happens. And it's beautiful. There's imagery that's used. The cinematography is excellent, but the mood, the setting, and the growth that she goes through as she communes with nature to kind of empower herself to confront her past is executed at such a high level. It's very moody and atmospheric, and visually tantalizing that it's worth a watch. It's a very good fall watch. It's a very good witchy watch. It's a very good female empowerment watch. I truthfully loved this movie when it came out. When we watched it, I gave it a 9 at the time. I think I've softened on my overall score, but I still feel strongly about it. Highly recommend it. It's a beautiful movie, and I think that the witchiness had to find a place somewhere because there's so much of it this year, and this is where it landed with me.
All right. My number 8, Soft and Quiet, written and directed by Beth De Araujo, starring Stephanie Estes. Um, this movie was, it started off as like this mind-blowing dark comedy that turns into a ridiculous tragedy of racism in your own backyard, and it feels so real. The acting is so incredible, the dialogue so realistic. You know these people, you've met these people. It was shot over 3 nights, and you could almost feel the urgency, and how it was rushed in the movie while you're watching it. You are literally on the edge of your seat. What's going to happen next? Feeling so much sympathy, empathy for the victims, and also just kind of like the wild ride of the main characters as everything spirals out of control. And the conclusion is almost something that, like, they obviously didn't want it to happen. They didn't plan for it to happen, but you could understand how it happened the way that it did. Yeah, Soft and Quiet. If you have an issue with like some hardcore racism, probably stay away from it. But it
No,
was a
I like it, so I'll watch it because of
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. If you love racism, it's a really
If you,
good movie.
yeah, we're kind of attracting the wrong crowd.
Yeah,
Not like it, but like it like seeing it being addressed
yeah,
as a bad thing.
yeah. If you live in upstate New York, you'll probably really identify with these main characters.
If you enjoy this movie for the wrong reasons, you might
Might be.
be a racist. uh, it's like the reason my dad liked the Gran Torino
Oh
for
God,
for the wrong
for the
reasons.
wrong reasons.
Rest in peace. Okay, my number 7 in our top 10. Continuing on, and this is a strong number 7. My number 7 almost has 7 syllables, and it's Resurrection, written and
Oh,
directed by Andrew Siemens, starring Rebecca Hall and Tim Roth. Look, Resurrection is a fantastic movie. We've already mentioned Rebecca Hall as lead performance, Tim Roth getting Nate's pick for best lead, best supporting rather, and it's 100% an amazing movie. I think the reason that it falls a little bit lower on my top 10 is strictly because of its uh, emphasis on the thriller side of the seesaw here versus horror. And that's where maybe I do this like weighting when I mention at the top of the 10 how I gauge things, and I'm doing it less, but this is where I place it. Like maybe that's where my barometer adjusts their placement in the top 10. Resurrection is a beautiful film, extremely well acted and well crafted, shot locally to us in the Albany, the capital region of New York. You can visit a couple of the locales. The Egg is featured. If anyone's familiar with New York and Albany, the Egg is a building, a performance arts building that's right next to where Rebecca Hall works, her character in the film. It's a bizarre story that, because the execution of the characters is at such a high level, the performances of them, because it's at such a high level, the haunting eeriness of the events that transpired that are really just spoken about. You don't really ever see anything happen. It's not until the very end that something kind of happens. All of this is just operating in your mind and the retelling of events, and it's building the sense of dread. And that's what this film it just relies on, is this dread and the emphasis through the performances that just create this sickening mood, and it's beautiful and awful all at the same time. It's not scary, it's just uncomfortable, and it's my number 7 slot.
All right. My number 7 is You Won't Be Alone, written and directed by Goran Stolevsky, starring some
Don't
people.
say it.
I was going to say, starring some people and a very nice short performance from Mimi Rapace in the middle of the movie, even though she's on the box art. Okay. They definitely throw her in the movie to sell tickets, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. You Won't Be Alone is another one of those witchy folk tales. It's a great, excellent, beautiful story about nature versus nurture, about gender roles in the 1800s,
It's,
maybe.
it's
Um,
Macedonia is what the
Macedonia,
film. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, it takes place in Macedonia. Um, yeah, so there's not much more I can say about this movie other than it is one of those slow burns that keeps you locked in every step of the way because the story is that good. Um, the acting is that good. The horror, kind of like he just said with Resurrection, is it's kind of like the catalyst. This witch
yeah,
ability to turn into other people is a little gory, and that's kind of like all you get until the end. But like, uh, it still it still warrants it. It still warrants it for me, and it is definitely nice and at home in the 7th slot on my list.
yeah. I'm glad that you mentioned it. It is a fantastic film, and I'm glad that witchiness has a home on your side too. So okay, we're gonna go with my number 6 then, and leading into number 6 is A Wounded Fawn. Uh,
Oh, we got our first double.
all
Hey,
right.
all right. The Wounded Fawn is also my number 6.
Directed by Travis Stevens, written by Travis Stevens and Nathan Fadre, starring Josh Rubin and Sarah Lind. Look, we both loved Wounded Fawn.
Oh, it's so
For
good.
me, Wounded Fawn is just a really cool setup of mythology and mystique around an intrigue around this object that then crashes with a serial killer plot that has its own psychological bent, traumatic past that's guiding him, and they collide together in this insane, bonkers, off the wall conclusion of a film that the whole ride is engaging. It's always taking it to a new level. It's changing things up a lot. It's doing visuals that you would never expect to see, but then they hit you and they blow you away. And it just one ups itself throughout the whole film. And the performances by Josh Rubin and Sarah Lynn, we didn't mention them in any of our categories prior as far as being leads or being amazing, but they're really up there with what the performances that they're giving. And man, yeah, this film is it's just satisfying and great. Like everything that I've already said, like it's very unique.
Yeah, it's a great movie. It's totally out there. It's indie at its best. I can't say enough good things about Josh Rubin in the last year. You know, he put out Scare Me. He directed The Werewolf Within. He's doing some really great things. There was one more thing he did. I can't remember. That's
I don't recall at the top of my
that's
head. He's been
that's
very
all right.
busy though. Yeah.
Yeah, very busy, especially in the horror genre, and we love to see that. All right, I think we can if we stay on in order. You do number
Yeah. Okay.
five.
So my number five, uh, I wanted a place for this movie, and this is where it landed, considering my final four ahead of it. And that's going to be The Innocents, written and directed by Eskil Vogt, starring a lot of youth actors whose names I do not want to butcher for fear of just wasting everyone's time. The Innocents is carried by the performances of its children, which are the film is visually stunning. It's shot from the perspective of youths and children in this apartment complex on summer, on like a holiday of sorts, where the apartment complex is sort of desolate. This kid comes by and like meets other kids, and then you start to find out some eeriness of how they're interacting with one another, and the supernatural element is introduced in a very kind of creative and interesting way that's innocent at first, but then it turns into it's sort of like a Pandora's box of possibilities once they start to acknowledge, embrace, practice, develop, and harness this power, this supernatural element that's there. And it's unsettling. Kudos also, it has maybe the most satisfying animal death that I've seen in a long time.
Uh,
So be on the lookout for that. Very satisfying if you're into animal deaths, because you know it's not real, so you can enjoy it just like we like gore, and you recognize Terrifier too. So like we can all say I'm not a Rodney's not a weird creep that he likes seeing cats get killed. I am, but don't judge me because of it.
right.
The Innocence, though, it looks beautiful. The story is very engaging, and you sympathize with the characters. You want something good to happen with them. You're rooting for them. You are sad for them whenever the protagonist of it comes to the forefront and is doing things that you hate to see happen. And I was always on the edge of my seat with this movie. I didn't know how things were gonna turn out, and the conclusion was very satisfying, albeit like still like a pensive moment, or like not pensive, but like a sigh. Like you release all this tension that you had, like it's resolved, but it's still kind of not. Like there's still all the trauma that has occurred, and while it's been resolved, you're still kind of like left reeling from the ride of what went through, and now what all the characters are still living with and going to have to experience, because a lot of trauma uh transpired during the runtime of the movie. So and yeah, another foreign film, and it's beautiful, it's fantastic.
All right. My number five, Deadstream, written and directed by Vanessa and Joseph Winter, starring Joseph Winter and Melanie Stone. This was a beautiful, beautiful marriage. Found footage meets The Evil Dead. It turns from comedy to horror on a dime perfectly. I love the practical effects. They are very reminiscent of Deadites when the ghosts take corporeal form. Um, the story is engaging, as we mentioned before. The soundtrack is hilarious and used to great effect. There is not much. There aren't that many bad things to say about this movie. The reason it's in the middle of my list is because my top four, they're just better movies.
All right, yeah. Okay, well then let's get into the top four. Number four for me is The Sadness, written and directed by Rob Jabez, starring again several. I want to say, is this Korean? I can't recall. Was this Korean or was this
This was shot in Canada, but this is, I believe,
Taiwanese?
Taiwanese.
That's correct. Okay. The Sadness. Wow. The Sadness. I don't know if it's a polarizing film. This was somewhat of a 2021 film, but it really never was available for anyone to stream or to view until 2022. I think you might have mentioned it in your
Yeah.
honorable mentions.
Yep.
It's in a top 10 for me. It's at number 4 because it was so satisfyingly enjoyable from a person that loves horror for horror's sake, like a true horror fan. Like, look, people that love Terrifier too, uh, you better go watch The Sadness, because The Sadness is how you embrace practical effects and gore and insanity in an intelligent way, or in a way where you're having a story or a movie that makes sense and is interesting or engaging, or something other than just some dumb I want to play with dumb effects. At any rate, we're going high. Positives, positives. The sadness is maniacally depraved. I will. There's trigger warnings. Soft and quiet, racism, trigger warnings. The sadness, gore, but sexual violence also.
Yeah.
They kind of just go balls to the
Yeah.
basket post with the depravity, uh and it's like as if the feeling and the energy of Train to Busan was directed to an outbreak that occurred in the middle of the town, and you stay in the town and you're just moving from location to location. That energy, that frenetic energy and chaos that's occurring, they capture it with the most amazing, some of the most amazing practical effects that you'll see. Blood everywhere, guts everywhere, and it's just they add this layer of some comedic quality to the spoken words that are occurring with the people that are under the sickness. But uh it's bonkers, and it concludes and cuts to credits, and the metal soundtrack that carries you out of the theater is a goddamn showstopper, like a chef's kiss on this like insane movie that you just watched. And it's like, strap in, motherfucker, you're in for a ride the whole time in this movie. It'll start from in like, 5 minutes in, but then once it happens, it's boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
and never lets up, and it's super satisfying. The
Yeah.
sadness, number 4.
Yeah. The action and the pacing of the sadness was definitely one of its better features. I thought it was
Yeah,
just nonstop.
yeah, full throttle.
Full throttle. This is number 4. Number 4 is Fresh, written and directed by Mimi Cave. Oh no, I'm sorry. Directed by Mimi Cave, written by Lauren Kahn, starring Daisy Edgar Jones and Sebastian Stan. Fresh was, it was funny, it was endearing. There were moments where you forget that you're watching a horror movie. The chemistry between Daisy and Sebastian is literally incredible. It is, you're watching, one of the greatest love stories ever told, but, she's chained to a bed in a room. All of the supporting actors are excellent, and the story is dark and morbid, and everyone plays their parts so well. Um, we saw this early in the year, and it has just stayed with me all year as a movie that I compared almost everything to it. Like I watched the movie, I'm like, oh yeah, it was good. It wasn't as good as Fresh, and maybe that's not fair to other movies, but Fresh definitely makes an impression, visually, and emotionally. Yeah, there's so many good things to say about Fresh with all of the subplots. There's so many subplots, because you don't know what's going on with him and his wife, and you don't know what's going on with this other character, and it all comes together and it all gets revealed. And all the questions get answered, and it's so satisfying. So number 4 is Fresh.
All right. So we're at the top 3 now. Look, you mentioned at the beginning of the list that things are all right here. It's hard to what bumps one above the other. And so, like, a lot of these are seemingly interchangeable, but our top 3 are coming up. And so that's at least how I feel about them. So my number
Sure.
3 is Barbarian, written and directed by Zach Krieger, starring Georgina Campbell, Bill Skarsgård, Justin Long. Barbarian, you're best not knowing anything going into it. and it's wonderful. Uh, so glad that I didn't know anything going into it. So glad that it was what it was. It's creative. It's laugh out loud funny. It's edge of your seat, enthralling and nerve wracking with the events that are going to be happening. It has scares. It has commentary. It has great performances, great chemistry with Georgina and Bill Skarsgård. Uh, Justin Long coming in, having such breaks and cuts from act to act, and then kind of still pouring on this air of uh, grossness from Justin Long's character throughout the final runtime of it in just a satisfying way, and the satisfying conclusion, and just continually surprising you with like knowing what should be happening, and then it kind of does do it, and you love it even more that it did do it. Like there's several scenes in this where you're laugh out loud, or like pumping your fist, or just excited that they actually did it. They had the balls to do it, and Zach Krieger deserves all the credit in the world for doing this. I think recognized him for screenplay
Best director.
and director, my apologies.
Yep.
And like, yeah, the way that this is orchestrated is to a very, very high level. Coming from a comedic background, I think that that's why it partially that it works in part because of his ability to know what to emphasize. The similarities with comedy and horror, as far as the timing of things and how it should be structured, is evident in this film. Super fulfilling and satisfying. Hard to delineate this between two or one, but this is where it's at. My number three is Barbarian.
Excellent choice. My number three is The Innocents, written and directed by Eskil Vogt. Um, there's not much to say that hasn't already been said. The movie's beautiful. The child actors are incredible. Probably some of the best I've ever seen. The story is fantastic. It's an emotional roller coaster. As much as I hate that phrase, you get invested with these kids, and you don't know where the movie's going, and there's so much fear, for these children, and yeah, it was a great story, beautifully acted, beautifully directed. The Innocence is number three.
Yeah, man, I just keep remembering some of the shots in that movie, like whenever they do that inverted camera work through the complex when they're hearing things happening or whatever.
Yeah,
Like it's just so beautiful and unnerving. Man, yeah, it is a great film.
yeah, I loved it.
All right. Number two slot. Okay. For me, my number two film is Fresh. Directed Mimi Cave, written Lauren Kahn, Daisy Edgar Jones, and Sebastian Stan starring. Nate mentioned it a couple moments ago. Fresh is fantastic. Fresh literally did have me screaming and throwing my arm in the air when the title card fucking dropped so far into the movie. It took such goddamn bravery to do that. Not unlike how Barbarian did something, but how Fresh did this was just like mind blowing because you forgot that you never were introduced to the movie. It's like it just started and then you're into it and then they do that and it takes it to another level. The marrying of the sound design with the events in the movie like was beautiful. I forever will think of this movie when I hear animatronics in Obsession. Same with Perfect Day, Lou Reed's Perfect Day that they do in this movie. It's so fun. Like those are great 80s songs, but the way that they are married into this film, it creates an environment where you're just like kind of really vibing and enjoying the events of Sebastian Stan's character, which you shouldn't. You should be repulsed and hating,
Yeah,
but he's so goddamn charismatic. You can't help but love him, and you don't want him to do what he's doing, but you want him to so bad also. Like you had said already, the way that that chemistry works with the two of them and the way that it culminates in the meals that they share and then the conclusion of all of her other co-stars and supporting lead female actresses, in the way that they're able to take ownership of their own, take agency in their own uh, finale of an ending. It was super gratifying, uh, and ended with a great comedic note with Daisy Edgar Jones that like just leaves you like just like chuckling in enjoyment of the insanity that you watched, but just how satisfying and well executed it was. Um, it is a shame that it came out so early in the year because I feel like it kind of got overshadowed by a lot of other stuff that came out
Mhm.
after it, which is fair because a lot of good stuff did come out after. And but like you said, it was always there. It lodged itself into this list the minute it came out, and we were like, shit. If films are as good as this throughout the rest of the year, it's gonna be a great fucking year. And we were right. Like that's
Yeah.
what the year was. Things were as good and similar to it, and it was a great year. And so I'm so glad that it set the tone. It's my number 2 slot, hands down.
My number two, and not to anyone's surprise, is Resurrection, written and directed by Andrew Siemens, starring Rebecca Hall and Tim Roth. This movie was so disturbing, so much. This is like, it's a psychological thriller more than a horror, but you get some of that good gore at the end, and it's also a slow burn, and it's so fucked up. Like I said before when talking about Tim Roth's performance, you have no idea. He's so good. You have no idea what's right and what's wrong, what's up and what's down. Rebecca Hall's performance is just she's just amazing. We gave best performance to her last year for Night House, and I mean I could watch Resurrection just every week just because of how well this movie's acted, let alone just how good the movie is in general. Um, Rebecca Hall carries this film. As I said before, if it was any other actress, the movie wouldn't have been as good. And that's keeping Tim Roth in there. Like Rebecca
Mm-hmm.
Hall is that impactful. She has that kind of screen presence, and she just goes into her characters 100%. And um, that's why I chose Resurrection for the two slot.
Yeah, the fact that it's at my 7 slot does not say anything about the quality of the film. There's a lot of great films up here, and it is excellent. I'm so glad that you've got it up there. Uh, to be honest, yeah, I could rewatch it a lot because of her performance alone. She's very good, and
She's so good.
she's striking. Like you you just can't get her out of your head once you watch the film and like you just think about it. Man, fantastic. All right, are you ready?
It's time
It
for
is time.
our picks separately for the best horror movie of 2022, years after the death of our Lord.
Fuck me. Ah,
That's an introduction.
yeah. How can I live up to that? My number one pick uh, is ultimately going to be Deadstream, written and directed by Joseph and Vanessa Winter, starring Joseph Winter and Melanie Stone. You mentioned it earlier, but for me, Deadstream is my number one in the same for the same fashion and reason that Malignant was my number one last year. It is the horror film that embraced everything about the genre that I love and executed it at a high level with very few sour notes, if any, that would pull me out or make me dislike it in any regard. I don't dislike this film for in any way, shape, or form. I love everything about it. It's a film that I'm going to show people to have fun with. It's a film that I'm going to show people to be a little bit scared with because it does both of those things to a high level. It's amazing that this is a film from two people that kind of came out of nowhere. Like they did a segment on VHS 99, but I don't think that they've done a ton much else. I can't remember. I think there was another project they were associated with, but it's to execute a found footage film in such a at such a high level is very hard to do. Like I included Dashcam because it does a lot of creative things that Deadstream doesn't. It's a different kind of found footage film, but Deadstream is just it's fun. It's everything that I love about horror in a movie, and I can't not celebrate that. He's excellent what he's doing. The comedic entertainment that you get out of it is super high, but the horror elements and the embracing of all the old tropes, the one-liners, the little jokes, the cam stuff, the ghost stuff, the visual gags that are happening, the the jokes that he's like kind of making, the comments,
Whispering strike.
strike, the soundtrack, which you've already mentioned and celebrated. It's all so smart and so creative that it's has the most unique elements in any of the films that I've talked about today. Has so many more of them than the other ones that for me it's my number one movie of 2022. It's the one, you know, Barbarian and Fresher, they're right there. The other ones that we've mentioned, they're there. It's going to be in the same list that I gave someone, but Deadstream, if there's one or two to only watch, Deadstream is one, the first one I'm going to say every time because I can trust that there'll be something to enjoy out of it. There's a small chance that you'll find him grading, but I think that if you understand films and if you understand horror, like you you set certain things aside or you understand like this is a gimmick, this is a thing, like this is intentional,
Yeah.
and you kind of go along with it, and he redeems it because it's so funny and well presented that you go along with it. Plus it's like it's a fucking performance, dude. It's like Soft and Quiet in that it's like an evening thing. It's a stream, it's a live stream event.
Yeah.
It's a thing that's going on. And it makes perfect sense. And I'm all there for it. It came out during Halloween. It's a perfect Halloween movie. It's my number one. It's everything that I love about horror in a film. Can't say good enough things about it. Enough good things about it. Whatever. All right.
Excellent movie.
Wrap it up. Wrap up the list, Nate.
Here we
Let's hear
go. Here we go. And if you didn't already guess it, you aren't paying attention. The number one movie of the year for me was Barbarian, written and directed by Zach Cregger, starring Georgina Campbell, Bill Skarsgård, and Justin Long. And this movie does everything right. From beginning to end, it doesn't make any mistakes. This movie, um, all the choices the characters make, they make sense for the character. They make sense for the situation. You never scowl and go, well, why did he do that? He wouldn't have done that. This
Mhm.
movie is excellently acted, as we said earlier. The writing is top notch. It is funny when it needs to be. It is tense and terrifying when it needs to be. Um, the reveal is crazy. It's batshit insane crazy. Uh, the dude is creepy as fuck. The monster is just as good, and you even feel like empathy, the sympathy for the monster. It has that kind of turn at the end.
Mhm.
Um, this movie even has a break, right? Like you
Yeah.
get introduced to a couple characters that ramps up the action, and then it cuts away, introduces another character. This is enter Justin Long. We he gets accused. We think he's a we think we side with him because we want to side with him because we think he's a main character, and then it turns out no, he is a piece of shit. Okay, so, and then he runs into the other character, and now it's like action, 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 and the story just unravels. We get a flashback. It feels very much like Tarantino wrote a horror movie. Um, in all of the side flash and the flashback. Um, it's not quite an ensemble cast the way Tarantino would like it, but uh, it goes hard all the way to the end, from about the midpoint, and keeps you fully engaged, edge of your seat. The climax is incredible. I can't I can't say enough good things about Barbarian. If you haven't seen it, goes right to the top of your list. Um, yeah, Barbarian.
Yeah, man. That's a great list topper for sure. It was at my three spot. Look, between Deadstream, Fresh, Barbarian,
I mean, what are you gonna do? Like,
like these are all
Yeah,
excellent films.
this was the hardest list I've ever had to make. Um,
Yeah,
this year was so incredible. I would like to point out 9 out of 10 of my movies were written and directed by the same person.
yeah,
Zach Kreger written and directed. Andrew Simmons written and directed. Eskel Vaught written and directed. Now, as some of the other movies, they have different writers and directors, and I think that speaks to how good a movie can be when its vision is not compromised by a third party, whether it be a producer or a studio or a director who reads a script and is like, I love the script, I have this vision, but it's not necessarily what the writer intended. Um, so who knows how it comes out. I think these 9 of these 10 movies speak to just how good how good the genre was in 2022, but also how good a film can be when you just leave the artist alone and
hmm
let him do his art.
yeah. I think that that's a good point. There's a lot of movies that had more notoriety this year that we don't include in our lists, uh, and they're good movies. Um, it's just I didn't think that that they're as good as the ones that we have in our top 10. And I wanted to in my top 10 I want to celebrate some of the ones that just don't have as much steam and money already behind them. Some of these did have some money behind them, but
Yeah,
not to the extent that some of the other ones did. And I think that their success, uh, given that handicapped, so to speak, just showcases how much more that artistic vision, how strong it was, and how it carried it to success. Hopefully, uh, in the years to come, with people that realize that they are highlights from 2022 as we move forward. People go back and they find it and discover it because of venues like us that showcase them. So that's
yeah.
my hope.
All right. Well, with that, that wraps season 2 of the podcast for the recently deceased with our best in horror 2022 episode. Once again, we are going to be on break for the month of January, so check us out early February. While we're gone, you've got podcasts, recentlydeceased.com. Check out the podcast on YouTube or basementmedia.square.site. I will eventually buy a .com for that. Check back with me in February.
Yeah, once all of our patrons, which we don't have a Patreon yet, start sending us a couple shekels, then we'll be all right.
Yeah.
Uh,
For the for episode 26 of the podcast for the recently deceased, I am Nate Roberts.
I'm Rodney Godek. Take care.
And we'll see you in a few months.